Welcome back to your favorite part of Monday. This week, we're going to be
putting on our thinking caps.
No, they're hard hats.
This week, we're going to be talking about deep bedding. And for those of you who do not know what deep bedding is, I will explain. It's deep, and it's bedding. It's that simple. It's a carbonaceous diaper to catch the manure which starts at composting. The basic idea of deep bedding is that you're putting a lot of carbon in with your animals to catch the manure and to start that into a composting process which does not smell. And so we're going to talk about some things that you can do that
will basically ruin your deep bedding.
Yeah.
It just makes it so it doesn't function correctly.
Leaving your wood chips or carbon, whatever you're using, your logs or something, out from under a roof or tarp of some sort. When you cut it or chip it up, it'll be most of the time it's green wood or wet wood already, so it needs to dry. So it needs to be underneath a roof or tarp. If you have it underneath a tarp, you want to untarp it during hot and sunny days so it can dry out and let off all the steam and stuff right up at the top. But when it rains or before it rains, you want to get it tarped again and covered so it does not get wet. You do this because if you have wet mulch, it does not soak up the urine from all your animals and it does not work properly. It gets too saturated and you end up having to add so much, like a lot. That is actually a mistake we did. It actually leads into the second mistake. The second mistake is not having your animals in a barn or doing deep bedding in a building. If it's not in a building, then the same thing will happen. You'll get rain on your deep bedding. It soaks up the water instead of all the urine and manure from the animals, and too much water will make it not compost.
So the third easy mistake is to not have enough carbon in your deep bedding. And we kind of covered that earlier with talking about how your wood chips really need to be dry and stuff, but also the amount you put in is really important because it needs to keep up with the amount of manure you have generated by your animals. So if you only have a couple of animals, it should be pretty easy to keep up with, but the more animals you have or the more confined space you have them in, the more carbon or wood chips in this case you'll be needing to put in.
Number 4, not enough oxygen. Pig deep bedding, they stir it all the time, plenty of oxygen. Cows, you add plenty of carbon, and then actually how most people do cows, then they put the pigs in on top, finishes stirring it. Chickens, if you have enough room and bigger wood chips, they will stir it enough, but in our situation, we have a smaller chicken coop and they're out during the day, in during the night. They don't end up stirring it enough for amount of nitrogen, which is in chicken manure, that gets added to the deep bedding. So you need to stir it every day to help keep it from smelling and to work properly and start its composting process.
Right, because the composting is what keeps down the smell, is that instead of smelling, it's actually breaking down and turning into compost.
Yep.
Which that leads us into number 5, which is not enough nitrogen. With chickens, you have the nitrogen that's in their manure, and usually you're just working on getting enough oxygen and carbon. But with pigs and cows, you need to add in nitrogen, which would be hay or green grass. And you can just add that in instead of carbon about every 4th time and mixing that in, or in the case of pigs, they'll mix it in for you. Again, it balances out the oxygen carbon and nitrogen, allowing the manure to compost instead of just smelling and attracting flies.
There are two different ways you can tell if your deep bedding is not working. It's super simple. If it smells bad, you're not doing something right, because that is what deep bedding's sole purpose or main purpose is to keep your barns from smelling and attracting flies, which is the second site. If there's a lot of flies around, could just be that your animals smell, but your deep bedding should not be attracting flies. And
you could also look for puddles or extra moisture, because that means you're not absorbing all of that moisture, and you probably need to add more carbon.
Make sure that those puddles, though, aren't from a leaking water or from water getting in from the barn, because if from the roof or through a door or something, because if that's happening, then you could be getting excess water, and it will be extremely hard to keep up with carbon.
Which we found out because our deep bedding we did for our pigs is an under roof. We just kept pouring on more and more carbon, and we could never keep up because of the rain, or in the wintertime, the snow.
It worked great in the summer. It didn't rain as much, and it was fine. We were able to keep up. It was a little harder, maybe a little more than usual than most people would put, but it did work in the summer. Didn't smell, not as much flies, but when it got into that fall and when it started raining and then we started getting snow, it quit working, got very bad, and smelled, attracted flies. So the best way to do deep bedding, the only way that it will work completely, is under a roof where there is no excess water. Thanks guys for watching our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something from it. We sure did over the last couple of years doing deep bedding. So I hope you learned what we learned in a couple of years and a couple of minutes. So hope you enjoyed watching a couple guys wearing hard hats talking about deep bedding.
And if you did learn something, make sure you subscribe and maybe share this video with a friend. See ya. You did first two?
Yeah.
So the second...
He means third.
And say this week.
Okay, this week.
This week.
Okay.
Or
Line.
this week. And then think again.
This week. Perfect.
Okay.
And if you don't have enough...
And if you don't have a lot of money, here's a solution.
Make it up.
Yeah, no, but you could do something like...
I'm serious. You just talk to me. If you need the paper, I've got...
No.